T-shirt and I have no jeans. Mark has accepted to speak to me. Yeah? They gave me, so I cannot, because I have the micro on the jacket. I cannot do that. So you see, I cannot be a showman. No way. Anyway, it's too late for me. Bonjour, Marc. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's an honor to be here.
Nice.
So I appreciate that we're going to have the opportunity to do this Q&A.
Good. So I will introduce Marc to you because I'm sure that very few people in the room have heard about you. Marc is 27. He is not a footballer, not in the US, not in soccer. He's not a tennisman. He's not here because of Roland Garros. But there has been already a lot of stories written about him, and even a movie about his life.
That wasn't really about my life.
No. And he's already at age 27 a legend. He's a rock star, and he needs no introduction. Everyone in the room knows more about Marc than probably he does himself, based on all the stories which have been written about him. And that's the magic of creating Facebook. There is one thing that you don't know about him. He is a sport champion. No?
Which sport?
I don't know. Look at this. Can we have the picture? I have been told that you are a sport champion in fencing.
Oh, way back in the day.
I don't know.
If you count high school.
Non, pas ça, la photo. It doesn't work. Sorry, I missed. Alors c'est ça, Publicis Live? Hein? J'attendais quand même quelque chose.
I was expecting more proficiency from Publicis Live. I'm really disappointed with our people here. Come on, guys. Shape up.
Here it is. Est-ce qu'on peut la voir sur le grand écran? Voilà. So,
this is, that's Cheryl's son. I'm teaching him how to fence.
It seems that he is teaching you.
In that one, yes.
Yes. Okay. Marc, I have a fun memory. Maybe you don't remember, but we have been together in a workshop in Davos. And this was something which was very ironic because in that workshop, the subject was all about how to reinvent your business. And the only person who didn't have to reinvent something, and he has been in the reinventing a business, was you. And the result of that workshop, that all the CEOs were thinking about how to take their company private. And now what we are speaking about is how you take your company public.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So there is one journalist-like question that I have to put to you because otherwise I will look bad in front of everyone. You had a meeting with President Sarkozy. How it was like?
It was fun. It was my first time meeting with him, so it was an honor to be invited over. I've found it interesting to watch the coverage of EG8 over the past day or so and hear about kind of his agenda and his goals. I feel like I understand where he's coming from, and it was really a good opportunity to hear from him on what his goals are. And I appreciate the chance to be able to be here and be part of the dialogue. I think that for a long time, the public and private sectors have worked together in a lot of different industries, and it's an important one. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have and whatever questions you guys have, and let's just go to it.
We have plenty of questions. The first one is, so I have selected a few questions coming from various sources, including Twitter and Facebook, and then we will have a conversation with the audience. The first question is, we don't know exactly the number of people using Facebook, but it's more than 500 million users. If you had to say one single aspect of what has brought so many people to use Facebook, what would you say?
Well, I think it's actually two things. So I don't know if I can boil it down to one, but I can do two.
You can do two. We will not negotiate one or two. It's fine.
So I think one of the best things about the internet is it gives everyone a voice, right? It makes it so that people who 20 or 30 years ago would not have had a way of sharing their opinion can now do it very easily, right? I mean, you can say whatever you think and put it online, and that's really powerful, right? It really is this very democratizing force to make it so that everyone who's out there who has access to a computer or a phone with the internet, which is an increasing portion of the world's population, now can share stuff. So I think on the one hand, that's very powerful. The second piece is that if you think about who most people actually want to be sharing with on a day-to-day basis, for the majority of people, it's their friends and family, right? So you balance this, on the one hand, the power of the internet, the ability to share whatever you want with whomever you want, with the audience and this network that is what actually most people want to communicate with on a day-to-day basis, their friends and family. And I think that that's really why everyone who's on Facebook is using it today, right? And I mean, for background, I started the company when I was in college. And what I wanted to do when I was getting started was simply just make a way for people to learn some things about the people around them at university and be able to communicate with people around them. And so basically stay in touch with their friends. And it's just turned out that over the past 7 years or so, as the company has scaled, that wasn't just a need that was fixed to my college or colleges in general. The desire to stay connected with your friends and family is, I think, a relatively universal thing across the world.
But Mark, you are second when you started, because MySpace was slightly before your time. Mm-hmm. And when you started, MySpace was already with a few million. And who is speaking about MySpace today? So what has been the magic formula which has created that incredible success?
Well, the thing that we focused on from the beginning is making it so that people had their real identity there and were sharing with people who were their real friends, right, and real family. So that basis of being grounded in reality has always been a very foundational element of what makes Facebook Facebook. And a lot of other social media sites on the web, whether it was MySpace or just blogs today or a lot of different things, they don't focus on creating a network where everyone is, who they are. And I think that there's actually a lot of advantages to that, too. I mean, there are advantages to both sides. The advantage on the real identity side is that you know who your friends are. You can look them up very easily because they have their real names in the system. So you can wire up a network of someone's friends very easily. And then people can share with their friends very easily, which is what I think a lot of people want to do on a day-to-day basis. On the other side, I mean, the reason why Facebook isn't the whole social media landscape and why I think that's good is because there's a lot of value in having anonymity and people being able to express things not tied to real identity as well. So I think you'll just kind of see both develop and evolve. And but I think as far as Facebook and other social networks, that real identity and real relationships component has been very important to our evolution.
So I understand that, and I think this is what everyone is understanding, that the fact that it is real, that it is about some true fact, is something which is essential. Now that you are seeing all this new generation using Facebook, what do you think? How do you think these people will evolve under the Facebook influence, how are they going to change or to live in this world of transparency, of sharing, of being open, compared to the things that you have yourself experienced, because you were born before Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the biggest thing is that transparency makes it so that, ideally, that that the best things can win. You know, whether it's the best product or, you know, the best restaurant, right? If I'm like looking for a restaurant, then, you know, back before the internet or before there were tools to rank what the restaurants were, get recommendations, you can maybe get opinions from a few people who you knew, or you experienced a few restaurants in your neighborhood and you can rank them. You know, now with the internet, there's the ability to get a lot more people's opinions, and hopefully, and what I expect will happen is that the best things rise to the top, right? And it creates a much kind of fairer ecosystem. You know, we have the story where, you know, one time we were talking to, you know, our business is advertising, right? That's how we make money. And one of the people who...
Mine too.
Yeah, you know,
but
so...
I don't want people to know, but mine too.
Different sides of the...
Oh, yes, I know. We'll be becoming very, very small compared to you.
That's not what I was saying. But... You know, one of the verticals that does really well for advertising on Facebook is movies, right? Media stuff in general tends to do very well because media is inherently social, right? And when you go to a movie, it's a social experience with friends. When you read a book, you discuss it with friends, news with friends, games with friends. So I was having this conversation one time with someone who was talking about advertising movies. He was like, you know, the issue that I'm having is now, these days, when I used to just be able to have really good advertising and at least guarantee that I'd have a couple of weeks of good box office returns. But now, you know, it comes out and then the first day, and then on the internet, people write about how good the film is, or oftentimes before the film even comes out, people know how good it is. And then, you know, maybe no one will see it. And, you know, and it was funny because the person was presenting this to me as if this was this big problem with the world, that now a bad movie would not be able to be sold. And I was listening to that and I was like, no, that's awesome, right? I mean, good movies should be able to make more money. Bad movies should not be sold, right, and should not make money. And I think that, you know, by making it so that everyone has the ability to share their opinions and get their opinions out there, I think that that's the world that we're building towards. One where the best products and the best opinions do win out in the public debate, and everyone can participate in that. So I hope that what this all leads to is better products. Right, better experiences in the world.
I was asking myself why the Social Network movie had so much success. So it's thanks to Facebook.
You know, it was well written.
It was a story. When it comes to sharing data, what do you think about how much is too much? Do you think that people are worried that Facebook has access to too much of their personal data, personal information, and can use them in a way which is irrelevant to their private life?
Well, I think that there's two questions in this. I mean, one is how much information is it good for people to share in general? And then there's the separate question of, you have on the internet a few companies, right, through which a lot of the sharing happens. I think they're both interesting questions. For the first one, I just think that people choose their own boundary, right? I mean, you have people who choose to be extremely transparent with their lives and share a huge amount, and then you have a lot of people who participate in Facebook actually still don't share that much. They mostly are getting a lot of value from other people around them who want to share, who are their friends and family, and maybe they share privately. Now, I mean, the majority of people are sharing some stuff, but the point is that there's basically this balance. And I think that balance is going to evolve over time. You know, if you'd asked people 10 or 20 years ago, I think that most people before the internet would have thought, you know, I would never want to share stuff on the internet, or, you know, I don't even know what you would have called it beforehand. But now,
we were calling it Minitel in France.
There you go. But
this is the antique world.
But now I think as there are more tools that are developed, people are finding more value in doing different things. So whether it's being able to put a photo album online and be able to share that with the people who you want from a vacation instead of just having to have digital prints. Or, now, I mean, the new thing in the last couple of years, location is getting bigger and bigger, right? And it's one of the budding services where now a lot of people are starting to share where they are, and the big piece of value that you usually get from that is being able to see who else is around you, who you wouldn't have known was around you. And some people find that valuable. Those services, I think, will continue to evolve and get even better. And then maybe even more people will find value in them. And so I think people are kind of finding their own balance on that. In terms of companies, I think that users and the people who are choosing these companies do a good job of picking which companies they want to trust with different things. I mean, the technology industry is so competitive, right? And I mean, you mentioned before MySpace, right? And the question of why did Facebook win? The common lore that I think people hear a lot is like there are these network effects, and once someone gets locked in and has a lot of people on their service, it's hard to displace them, so you can do all this bad stuff. And I just think that is not true. I mean, we had a point where MySpace had 100 million users, and Facebook had 10 million users, and at the time, Yahoo was trying to buy Facebook for $1 billion, and we had 10 million users, and everyone thought that I was crazy to sell, and the argument was, everyone is locked in, MySpace could mess everything up, and they'd still win. And I just don't believe that. I think that it may take a year or 2 or 3 or 5, but I think that the best services win, and that what people really wanted was a service where they could share with the real people who they knew, and we executed on that, and then over the next period of years, we passed them. So, I don't know. I tend to think that the internet is extremely competitive and that consumers and competition really do a good job of selecting the best services.
You have resisted the check of $1 billion at age 25?
I think I was 22.
That's the reason. That's the reason. At age 25, you would not have it. But at age 22, I understand. We have been kept very busy yesterday and today about the future of the web. And all the discussion during these 2 days is to bring some ideas and maybe some directions to the G8 meeting tomorrow. And you will be part of it. What do you think will be the biggest trends or the most interesting trends in the web in the next few years? And what do you think will be very new?
Well, I think that this trend of people being empowered to share things that they want is going to be the trend of the next, I don't know, whatever period of time, 5, 10 years. I just think that we're much closer to the beginning of that trend than we are to the end still. And I mean, if you think about the internet in theory should give everyone the ability to share whatever they want. And in theory, it's true, right? I mean, and it's in practice a lot more true today than it was 10 or 20 years ago. But I mean, a lot of people today, in order to share the things that they want, are still, hand coding their own websites and building their own ways to share stuff. I think that these tools like Facebook and other social networks and social media sites are just going to get a lot better and more expansive in terms of developing more ways that people can share things. And I can speak to the strategy that Facebook is taking to enabling this. Our approach is that we think that there's only 1 or 2 things that any one company can really do well. And we think that we understand the kind of core social dynamics about building this real world, real friendship network. But at the same time, there are all these other features and products and industries that should get built and that should become more social that we just don't think we're going to do. And then the best example of that is gaming, right? So like 4 years ago, I think it's actually 4 years today. Today's the 24th.
25th.
All right, so yesterday. Get confused with the time. But
you get confused sometimes?
I'm communicating with people back in Palo Alto.
This is very important information for the audience.
What's up?
That you can get confused.
So 4 years ago, yesterday, today in Palo Alto, we opened up this development platform. And we made it so that people could build all these different social features on top of Facebook. And the industry that's taken off the most has been gaming. And it's just been interesting to watch. I mean, there's this company, Zynga, that probably a lot of people have heard of,
yes.
now has passed in market cap Electronic Arts, which was kind of the incumbent before social gaming. And I think the thing that happened is that people found out that they would much rather prefer to play games with their friends. Right, and I mean, EA enabled people to play some games with friends. I mean, you had consoles and you could sit there with your friends and play games. But Zynga fundamentally has baked social dynamics into the games themselves, and so have a lot of other gaming companies, right? So there are a few other companies, Playfish, which was, I think, bought for, it was a company based out of the UK that was bought for almost $500 million. And Playdom was another company that was bought for almost $1 billion last year. So these are pretty real companies that are getting built on top of Facebook platform, building social applications. So why did gaming go first in terms of the industry? I think because gaming is an extremely naturally social thing. What are the things that I think are going to happen next? I think are going to be other media experiences, right? So music is something that people do with their friends. Movies, TV, news, books, those types of things that are, I think, things that people just naturally do with their friends, and are good prime examples of applications and industries that I think will become more social in the next few years. Now, is Facebook going to do those? No way. I mean, we don't have the DNA to be a music company or a movie company. That's just not our thing. But I hope that we can play a part in enabling those new companies to get built and the companies that are out there producing this great content to become more social and make it so that people can share what they want online. And I think that we're going to see similar kind of transformation in a lot of these industries over the next, whatever period of time, 3-5 years that we found with gaming so far.
What do you consider is the most important aspect in your DNA? Is it social or technology?
It's an interesting question. When I was in college, I was dual major in computer science and psychology. So I guess I said before that you get maybe one or two things that you can understand, and I don't know if anyone really understands psychology fully, but I think those are kind of the two things that I think make up Facebook's DNA. On the one hand, we're very deeply a technology company, and on the other hand, we are very deep in terms of trying to understand social dynamics. We have this principle that we call social design at the company, which is that a lot of the ways that you design social products are fundamentally different from normal interactions that you would design in other products. And there's a really good example is friend requests, right? I mean, any of you guys who have used Facebook know that accepting and kind of building up your friend list is an important part of the experience, right? I mean, because you find people who you know in real life, and they find you, and they ask you to be your friend, and you need to mediate who are the people that are your friends and who are the people who want to be your friends who you don't actually consider to be your friend. Now, traditional interaction design and design of products would dictate that you would want to have an interface where it was more like, okay, you can say yes or no to the requests. And what we found, and that's actually originally what we had, but we found that was actually really stressful to people, right? Because they didn't want to say no to people because it's a person at the other end of the interaction. It's not like a task that you're checking off, right? And when you say no to someone's friend request, that has the potential to cause stress in real-world relationships. I mean, maybe you do know the person, but you don't want them to be a friend. You don't want them to be on the list of people that you're sharing with on Facebook. So we changed the dynamics, so now it's accept or not now. And statistically, if you say not now, you're basically not going to accept them. But the point is that it's much actually easier and makes people feel less bad about rejecting the friend requests, and it makes them feel less bad about having a long list of friend requests that they haven't dealt with yet. Now, I think that there's a lot of things like that, just all throughout all these products that kind of tap into the social nature of humans that make these products different from traditional products. Another example is just, if you look at Facebook, there's people's faces all over the product. One of the things that I learned from studying psychology is that people have a whole part of their brain whose only job it is to process faces, right? I mean, if you came into the room and I moved this cup half an inch, you wouldn't notice, right? But if I squint my eyebrow 2 millimeters, you would notice because it means a completely different thing, right? And I'm just like emoting something completely different. And I think faces are very rich to people, right? And you learn a lot from looking at people's faces. And I don't know, these are just a couple of basic examples, but I think that this principle of social design is going to be baked into all of these different social applications going forward. Now, it's going to be different ones in different industries too. So if you look at gaming, for example, the social gaming companies, I think, have discovered different things that Facebook didn't even understand before. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's good for the industry that social gaming companies are not the same company as Facebook. Facebook doesn't make games. We build a platform on top of which these things can get built. And I think in each of these industries, over the next 3 or 5 years, I think the media ones are going to be big ones. I think it's, in music, it's going to be someone who really understands music and people, right? In movies, it's going to be someone who really understands movies and people, right? And that's a little bit different of a makeup than what we have in the industry today. But I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be really valuable when it does.
It's fascinating. When you created Facebook, I understand that you were understanding the impact on social. Had you ever think that this could have an impact on revolution? And how are you reacting to the Jasmine revolution, the use of Facebook, Twitter? And have you ever imagined that your tool, what you have built, could change to that point the life of the people?
Yeah. So I actually think that there's a bigger trend, which is just that people are now having the opportunity to share their opinion and communicate, right? And it's not a Facebook thing, it's an internet thing. And when people have the ability to voice their opinions, I think pretty interesting things can happen, and hopefully over the long term, generally positive things can happen because just the will of the people is heard more. Now, a lot has been made about the revolutions in Egypt and Tunisia and Facebook's role in them. My own opinion is that it would be extremely arrogant for any specific technology company to claim any meaningful role in those, right? I think that Facebook was neither necessary nor sufficient for any of those things to happen. And the thing that was both necessary and sufficient was a population of people who felt very strongly that change needed to happen. So I do think that over time, the internet is playing a role in making it so that people can communicate more effectively, and that probably does help to organize some of these things. If it weren't Facebook, it would be something else. But I do think that the overall trend that's at play here, which is people being able to share what they want with the people who they want, is an extremely powerful thing, right? And we're kind of fundamentally rewiring the world from the ground up. And it starts with people being able to communicate on a day-to-day basis with the people who they want, which on most days is just their friends and family. And then I think it is kind of escalates up to the next level, which is businesses, right? And what products and how the economy works and how those flow through the system. So, what games people want to play, what movies people want to watch, what restaurants people think are good. That information is all being spread more efficiently now. And then kind of the final level, I think, is people having more of a say in governance, right? And I actually think a better example than the revolutions that you just talked about for getting people involved in governance is the fact that now a lot of heads of state and leaders of different countries have pages on Facebook and different social media presences and are actively engaging the people who they're governing all around the world, and that people now have a chance for the first time to write back, and that, whenever I talk to any of these heads of state, I'm like, okay, well, what do you think about this? And they're like, well, I like the fact that I can communicate. People always disagree with me actively on my page. And I'm like, well, don't you think that's good? And for the most part, they're like, yeah, that's what democracy is all about. So I think it's really powerful. But the underlying thing is the internet.
Yes. I think, nevertheless, that without mobile phone, without Facebook, without Twitter, for this population, we have tried already to protest in past years. It would not have been possible to do it this time. And I think that Facebook, Twitter, SMS have been a fantastic enabler for them to get together, to meet and to protest publicly and to make it known. Because in most of these countries where there is dictatorship, everything is locked. So I think that it's nice to be modest and to consider that the role of Facebook has been relatively limited. but in fact it has been hugely powerful.
Well, the thing that I would say, though, on this is that the thing that I think gets distorted a bit in the media covering this stuff a lot is that the ability for people to share mundane things about their lives or just day-to-day things that they want to share on a day-to-day basis with their friends and their family and the people who are around them are exactly the same tools a lot of the time that enable these broader changes. And whenever there's some broader change, people applaud and think this is awesome, but then at the same time, people get really worried about the use on the day-to-day basis. And are people wasting their time? Are they doing things that are bad? And I just think that, when you're thinking about, this is actually really important, I think, for this conversation around how the public and private sectors work together, is you want to make sure that you have a full understanding of the issues and how they connect. And I just think that that's what this dialogue here is all about.
While we were starting the meeting yesterday, a news broke regarding some decision that seems to have been made on the access of Facebook to kids under age 13. Maybe you can elaborate on this, because there has been quite a controversy about this idea.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I think what I said was, I should probably clear up what I actually said and what is going on. So I guess earlier last week, I was speaking at an education entrepreneur conference, and I was invited to speak, I guess, because I'm involved in this education effort that's going on in Newark, New Jersey. And one of the things that someone asked me was, okay, so it's interesting that you're doing this whole philanthropic thing. Why isn't Facebook getting more involved in education, especially of young people? And my answer was that the current regulations make it difficult and add a lot of friction for people who are under the age of 13 to use social networks like Facebook, right? In the US, a parent has to either fax in a signature or have a credit card and kind of verify through a credit card that they want their child under the age of 13 to sign up, and that just ends up adding a lot of friction to the sign-up process. So we just haven't gone there yet. We haven't tried to figure out how to make a service that can support people who are under the age of 13. Now, over time, I think that that's an important dialogue to be a part of, and that's all that I said. Facebook is not, we're doing a lot of things right now, but I can promise you that, in the next 3 months or the next set of rollouts that we have, one of the things that we're rolling out is we're not trying to work on the ability for people under the age of 13 to sign up. Now, over some time in the future, I think it makes sense to explore that, but we're not doing anything like that yet.
Okay. Now, as it has been a controversy, it was interesting to clear up the things.
I think what was said was that I thought that people under the age of 13 should be on Facebook. And
this is what has been written.
Yeah, no, and that's not what I said. I think what I said was that currently under the current, under the current situation, people under the age of 13 can't really sign up. We do not allow people under the age of 13 to sign up. And I think if we ever were, we would need to try to figure out a lot of ways to make sure that they were safe, right? Because that's just extremely important. And that's just not the top of the list in terms of things for us to figure out right now.
I will move to another subject. You mentioned businesses and how businesses are using Facebook. Do you have already some very solid experiences with industries? And can you share with us what are the industries which are most interested in Facebook, using it seriously, and in which area this is happening beyond advertising, obviously?
Well, I think the best example is going to be these platform companies, right? So companies that are trying to make existing industries or new industries more social, and are doing so by integrating with Facebook in some way. And I mentioned this before, but I think the best existing example from the last 3 years has been games, right? I think that the gaming industry has been completely transformed, right? And social gaming, I think, is, it's taken off from scratch to be the biggest companies in the gaming industry are now social gaming companies. But over the next period of time, I think that it's going to be a lot of other companies and industries that also are just kind of naturally social, right? So things like when you're listening to music, I just think music is a good example, right? Because people listen to music with friends. I mean, you read news and you discuss it with friends. And I just think that there's going to be an opportunity for a lot of these industries to be rethought from the ground up, to be social. And if what we've seen with social gaming is any indication, then what you're going to find, I think, is that the opportunities when you make these products social are a lot bigger than the existing ones. And most things that people want to do, they'd do even more if they could do it with their friends. So those, I think, are really exciting opportunities. And the platform thing is not just a few big companies. I mean, there are more than 1 million developers building stuff around the world, right? So I think that, in any country that you look, I mean, there are a bunch of developers. I mean, I looked before I took this trip to Paris, how many developers are there in France alone building games. And it turns out that there's a public company in France that's building games. And then there's a couple of the other biggest game developers are French game developers. So, I mean, this is one of the things that's making it so
you
that
have in the first row Jean-Bernard Lévy, who is the head of Vivendi. And with Vivendi, you have Blizzard as well as...
I don't know. This is the thing that for the next 5 years, I'm the most excited about. Right.
But speaking about the more classic corporations, let's speak about the financial corporation or petroleum, oil, BP. How are they using Facebook to change their image or to communicate internally and externally in order to understand how people feel the pulse of the company and how they can themselves change the course of action?
Well, externally, at least, I mean, we have this Pages product where, I mean, a lot of businesses, whether they're larger brands or just small businesses, right, local businesses, can all universally, you just go, you sign up for a page, and the way it works is pretty simple. People can go and they can like your page if they like what you're doing, and if I go and say I were to go and like the Publicis page, right?
You will.
Now, are you saying I will?
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, no, I mean, why would and then my friends, when they log into Facebook that day, are going to see that I like that brand. Right now, if you think about advertising, what's going to be more effective? Any advertisement that you show a person for your own business, or me saying to my friends, I like this thing. I think what we've found statistically is that the latter is always better, right? So you can have the best creative in the world, but a good recommendation from someone whose opinion you trust will always outperform that. Now, in the best case, you can couple them together and have both a good creative and be like, and this is endorsed, and one of your friends or 10 of your friends likes this thing. But I just think that that's extremely powerful advertising, right? And, businesses can come and they can do it organically, right? So signing up for a page is completely free, and you can set that up. I can like it, that spreads it to my friends. Then you can communicate with all the people who are fans or who like your page, right? So you can publish stuff, and if they're interested, then they can get those updates, and they can communicate with you. And if they communicate with you, then that can get spread to their friends as well. And then, of course, if you want to advertise, then you can spread that message even further through being a part of the ad network that we have. But I don't know. I mean, those two things, it's a system that's working really well. And it's good for both local businesses and bigger companies. And on the local business side, we tend to have more people who are just using organic, right? So a lot of businesses come into the system at first and just try experimenting with the free products. And then once they see that it works, then often they kind of up and start buying ads to promote what they're doing even more. On the brand side, typically people start off with ads because that's what they're familiar with, and then they find that the page is actually very valuable for organically spreading content. So over time, I think people are going to do a lot of both.
I agree as an advertising person that recommendation, endorsement from a friend is sometimes more powerful than the greatest ad. So we are on the same page on that front. I have selected a few questions from Facebook users. So we will go through some people who are asking questions, and I will start with Kimberly. Kimberly is in the USA, and she said, there are many people in my organization who think social media sites are a trend, a flash in the pan. How would you respond to that comment?
Well, I think that the trends that are at play of people having the ability to just share more on the internet in general and giving everyone a voice, and that coupled with people wanting to communicate with their real friends and family are probably very much not, those I think are just core trends in society, right? I mean, over a very long period of time, people have gotten more and more rights, and that on the one hand, right, and then I think the internet is helping to push that and give people the ability to share what they want now, and then on the other hand, for forever, I think people have wanted to share and hang out with their friends and family, so I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So I think the mediums that people use will probably change a bit. Right? I mean, Facebook on its own has evolved quite a bit in the 7 or 7.5 years that we've been around. Right? I mean, if you were to look at the service even 3 or 4 years ago, you probably wouldn't even recognize most of it, or you'd realize that more things have been added than you thought. And then, you know, some specific services will come and go, but I don't know. I think that this trend is here to stay. I think people will continue getting the ability to share their opinions more and more broadly, and I think that that's a really good thing.
I have a question from Luis Zeni from Brazil. In what area or at what time have you seen the most misunderstanding among users regarding a Facebook product or feature?
Well, and that's an interesting question. I mean, we've often had this interesting process of rolling out products where, you know, we'll think about something and we'll plan it out and build it for half a year or a year, and we'll kind of understand from all of, you know, everything we know about how people want to share on the service, what we think is going to be good and what's going to enable people to share more stuff and share the things that they want, and then we'll roll it out, and pretty often there will be this backlash, right? And people will say, okay, well, we don't like this new thing, and it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways it gets to this balance in society about, it's, I think, a real anxiety, and I think it makes sense in a lot of ways how people are thinking about the internet enabling people to share more, and on the one hand the value of that, and on the other hand people being afraid of having more information out there and the value of that. And you know, as we kind of help build products that we think are enabling people to do more and more of what they want, I think it in some ways highlights this tension a lot. So I mean, you can go through the whole list of major Facebook products over the last 5 years, you know, starting with you know, deciding to open it up more, right? I mean, people were really afraid of more people being able to be involved in the social network, and what that would mean for the dynamics of sharing things. To Newsfeed in 2006, I mean, 10% of our customers or users, and in 2006 we had 10 million users, 1 million of them protested the Newsfeed changes. I mean, making it so that now you could get this updated list of news about what your friends were doing on the site, and people thought that, you know, it was just too much, right? They wanted to share stuff on the site, but they didn't want it to be so much in people's face. And, you know, now it's just a part of the site that I think most people, if it went away, would be like, what's going on? Like, how can there be Facebook without this? You know, Platform, when we first made that, that was fairly controversial, right? A lot of people were like, okay, well, how are you going to make it so that you can have all these third-party developers and people building applications that have access to my friends, right, and some of my information, and without having it be kind of a rampant issue of services abusing users? And I think the reality there is that a lot of really valuable services have been built, and a lot of steps have been taken to make sure that everything is kind of under good control, and that there isn't a lot of abuse. But you know, just almost every single thing that we do, there is some tension around that, and it's one of the core things that we pay attention to. You know, one of the reasons why I'm much happier to be on the private sector business side of this debate than being a part of the governments who have to figure out how they want to deal with their part of it is that, you know, if it were a matter of winning debates around this stuff, I think it would be extremely hard to ever get the point across, right, about the value of the internet. But I mean, one of the good things about the internet is you can just kind of build something and people will choose to use it or not, and that's how we win debates, right? So that I think is, you know, that's a little, I feel like I can participate on that level. I don't think the ability to actually like win in a public debate around this stuff is quite difficult, though.
I think you are winning on both.
I don't know.
I have a question from Iran. Amir Hossein Rafati. Amir Hossein has put two questions. One you have already answered, which was, what do you think was the major factor that made Facebook the most successful social network website on the web? But the second question is something which is quite interesting at your age. Any advice for entrepreneurs looking to build successful sites and products? So what advice would you give?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key is that you just have to really believe in what you're doing, right? You know, in Silicon Valley, there's this phenomenon where a lot of people decide that they want to build a company before they decide what company they want to build. And honestly, like, that's crazy to me. Like, I mean, I can't relate to that at all. I mean, when I got started with Facebook at Harvard, I specifically didn't want to build a company. I just wanted to build something that could have an impact, right, and that I wanted to use and that I believed in. And, you know, I think there are so many challenges in building something that, in a way, if you don't believe very strongly in what you're doing, it's not rational to actually follow through and build it, right? And you know, when you look at a lot of the decisions that we've made, you know, whether it's like launching products and some of the backlash that we've had, or, you know, early on we were talking about whether, you know, I should have sold the company or not when I was 22. I think the only way that you make the decisions that we ended up making there is if you value what you're doing higher than kind of money in the short term, or not making people upset in the short term, or things like that. So, but I don't know. I mean, what we've seen on the internet and in a lot of other industries, it's a very repeatable process. I mean, a lot of people these days can start a company, and if they believe in something, now have the ability to start it and build out a team. So I think that that's the most important thing.
With my gray hair, I fully agree with you. I think we should never think about building a company. We should think about what we have in the heart, what we feel in the guts, and do it. There is many more questions from Facebook. I think that you can answer that from your laptop. What I would like now, if you don't mind, is that we move to the audience and that we see if there are some few questions. I'm not sure that they are interested in putting any questions, but we'll see. You raise your hand high in order that I see you. Okay, third row. You say you put a short question in order that we have maximum people participating.
Very short question. My name is Philip, in business. I would like to know if what you're saying about the question we have in France, that the transparency on the social networks is compromising the sincerity of exchanges.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
I repeat. Sorry,
just the last part. I didn't get like the last phrase.
I said, do you think that the transparency on the social networks is a default to get the sincerity in discussions on social networks?
Sorry, I still didn't
understand. Okay. Je crois avoir compris votre question.
I think I understood your question. Do you think that transparency in social networks is damaging to the sincerity of the discussions?
As it is transparent, can we be sure that it is sincere, what we see on the social network? In other words, are people really sincere when they are putting questions, when they are on social networks? Are they sincere? It's about sincerity.
I don't feel like I fully understand, but...
okay, so we move to the next question.
I'll try to answer the question,
okay,
but I feel like from the round of applause from the audience, I feel like you're getting at something that maybe people want to hear that I want to make sure that I can actually answer. You know, one of the things that I think about, and just correct me if I'm going in the wrong direction or if I'm not answering the question.
But it's good to have your answer to the wrong question.
Not as good as the answer to the right question, but well... you know, I mean, one of the attributes of Facebook that we've talked about a bit today is this real identity culture, right? Real identity and real relationships. And one of the attributes of that is that when someone says something, their name is attached to what they said, right? So on the internet and in other anonymous places, you know, anyone can sign up and create a blog somewhere and say whatever they want and not attach their name to it. But with real identity comes real accountability too, right? I mean, you can sit there and you can say whatever you want and have whatever opinion you want, but you have to put your name and your reputation next to it, and I think that that's a very healthy balance. Now, I mean, I think that there are people who will say, okay, well, but it's really, sometimes you can't actually express what you think when there's real identity, and anonymity is valuable for that. And I agree with that too. I think that there's a place for both anonymity and real identity. It's just that the service that Facebook is building is the real identity one, and one of the values of that is accountability. So, and I think that that's a very valuable part of the system.
Now, in fact, the question is based on the fact that this is a Frenchman, and he doesn't rely on the French people to say the truth. We have the next question.
Hi. Mark, firstly, congratulations on having built a wonderful company and being an inspiration to a lot of entrepreneurs. My question to you is, Facebook is perhaps one of those first companies which has made such global impact, but a lot of your audience has actually come from outside of the United States. I believe about 600 million consumers now, and a lot of them. And from whatever we've heard in the last day and today, is that the next 2 billion consumers are going to come out of markets like Africa, Asia, etc. How are you as a company preparing such that you are able to take those cultural nuances and build a company which will really look for the next 2 billion internet users?
Okay.
Well, so the cultural nuances are interesting. You know, whenever I travel, one of the questions that I always get is, how do people use Facebook differently in this country than in other countries? And I also get that question often about age groups too, right? How do people of one age group use it differently than people in another age group? And by far the most interesting thing that I've found in watching the company grow is how similar people are and not how different they are. Right, and you know, so there are obviously all these differences. I mean, people use the service in a different language, and there are local platform developers who, you know, I mean, maybe people here prefer playing games that are in French or a local game that's built by French developers. But by and large, I mean, the way that people are using the service, the core tenets of it are the same, right? I mean, people still want to just share stuff, right? And they want to have the ability to exercise, you know, their expression, and they want to share with friends and family. And I mean, I feel like I've said that a lot of times, so I hope I'm not being too repetitive. But I mean, almost everyone around the world has friends and family, and that's a very universal piece of it. So in terms of these new places, I think the more relevant thing is actually, I mean, I was talking before about how Facebook has these two parts of our DNA. On the one hand, technology, and on the other part, kind of social or understanding people. I think the understanding people part won't be that different in those places. The thing that I think is going to be different is the technology, right? Because over the next 5 years, there are going to be way more people who are accessing products like Facebook over phones, right, and mobile devices than there will be over people using it on traditional computers. And that's a big shift, and the way that you build software for those environments is different, and we're really gearing up for that, and we have some cool things coming out for that soon.
I will move, yes, yes.
So you've talked about the mobile phone as a sensor of our behavior, and of course Facebook gathers some of that through Foursquare and things like that. Our credit cards are another sensor of our behavior. So my question is, if we were friends and I said to you, I'm asked if I want to opt in on merging my credit card data and everything else that's on my Facebook page, what would you tell me are the pros and cons of that? Like, I would know 10 of my friends already bought this, which might be a pro. And the second part of the question is, do you plan any joint ventures with American Express or other company?
Well, no, nothing planned. You know, before I was talking a bit about how every industry has somewhat different social dynamics, and I think that sharing the things that you're buying is an interesting behavior that I think specific entrepreneurs with specific insight about that will end up building those products. And let me I can give you some examples of some of the issues that play into that, right? So, you know, one of the companies that we've been talking to recently that is trying to become more social and is very public about this is Netflix, right? So I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with that here. I think right now it's still primarily a US and Canada service. But they try to make it so that people share their service and that it spreads that way. And they've played around with all these different kinds of incentives, right? Making it, you know, so that you can share it and then maybe if you get a friend to sign up, then you get some number of free months. Or if you share it with someone else, then they get some extra number of free months. And it turns out that some of those incentives and dynamics are just fundamentally better than others, right? In some environments, the benefit accruing to the person who's doing the sharing works better. What Netflix had found in this example was that it was actually the altruistic dynamic was much more better, right, for sharing, right? Where if you, when you chose to share Netflix with someone else, that if you gave them free months of using the service, that ended up performing a lot better. So I just think in all these different industries, there's going to be different dynamics. And it's going to be people who both understand a lot of the nuance about payments and how that plays out, plus a lot of the specific psychology around how people think about payments and think about interacting with payments with their friends. And this is precisely why I don't think that Facebook is going to do all of these things. And why, rather than trying to do each of them, what our focus on is building the core platform so that whoever does build that product wants to work with Facebook and build on top of our system, so that way, you know, when you do think about sharing with your friends, whoever the app developer is will figure out what the dynamics are around that, but the friends are the ones that you have on Facebook, right? And you're sharing with those people on Facebook. And that's how I think we can create a lot of value.
This is very wise. Mademoiselle, the blonde lady.
So Mark, you've really been successful in creating an operating system for the web and maybe for the new business startups on the web. How are you going to translate that into devices?
Into devices. Are you going to create mobile phones, laptops, iPads, Facebook pads?
I think that there are good ones already, right? And that's not our business. I mean, talking about kind of what the core competence of a company is, I think we get software development and we get social dynamics. I don't think that we are not, well, insects on me. I don't think that we get hardware.
The garden, that's the reason.
Well, it's not that big of a deal. Where was I?
There is very good.
What's up?
Devices.
Yeah, they're good devices. So, I mean, so far what we focused on is just building really good experiences for these things, right? So, I mean, we have an iPhone app that a large number of people use. We're really proud of it. I use it. I really like it. We have Android apps that are really good. We have actually more used than either the iPhone or the Android apps are the mobile web apps. Which speaks to the diversity of operating systems and phones that are out there. Right, way more people today are using the mobile web version of Facebook on phones that are not Android or iOS based than are actually just using specific apps on those devices. And I just think that these trends will continue. So I mean, overall, I think we have, you know, there are more than 300 million people who are using Facebook on mobile devices today. It's growing extremely quickly. It's growing at a much faster rate than web is. And I just expect that will continue.
Yes, the man standing.
I think we were
very short, please.
Yes, we were all very sensitive to your message about your humility message about the role of tech companies in the Arab Spring movements that we've seen. You must have been correlating the conversations on Facebook with what actually happened in the street in those countries with companies such as Bitly. Can you share with us what those correlations might have led to?
I'm not actually sure I understand.
Well, basically, there must have been correlations between what the conversations going on Facebook on a given day in Tunisia or Egypt and what actually happened placed to here, on Tahrir Square.
Okay, in fact, the question is, are you working with the CIA in order to look what's happening so you can warn government on what's going on in the next day on Facebook?
You know, okay. I mean, some of the time what we do is we do this analysis, anonymized, of course, on like, so of all the things that people are posting, what are the things that they're talking about? And some of it is actually pretty interesting. So we do this sentiment analysis about people's happiness and things that they mention. And like going out and partying on Friday night is highly correlated with being hungover the next morning, it turns out. So, I mean, there's like, and you know, I mean, there are interesting things like that, and you know, New Year's people are really psyched, Christmas people are really psyched. If you were tracking specific keywords, then you might have been able to pick up specific things. But one of the things that I think is actually the most interesting is that if you were looking at all of the sharing overall across the system, that stuff would have been tiny, right? And I think it just speaks to this, this dynamic that's going on that you can't really separate out the stuff that's really world-changing that people want to do from the stuff that's just day-to-day. I took some photos of something that I thought was cool and I want to share it with my friends, right? I mean, it's like the same things that enable people to connect with and share with just their friends or just their family or everyone in the world if they want are the things that enable people to be able to organize in these kind of times too. And I just think that that's an important dynamic for people to keep in mind because on the one hand, I do want to be very realistic about Facebook's own involvement in this stuff because I think it was much more minimal than the media portrays it to be. But at the same time, I mean, we see this kind of dual coverage in the media and in the public debate where on the one hand, people are like, okay, yeah, you enabled this big change. That was sweet. But on the other hand, like, you're enabling all this sharing and that might be kind of scary and we're not sure if we like that. And it's like, I think it's really hard to have one without the other. And that's like those underlying rules of how the internet develops are just really important to understand before trying to figure out what kind of rules should govern that.
Thank you. We have to stop the question. We are slightly ahead of schedule.
We're also out of Gatorade, which is good. I've been trying to balance my Gatorade intake with sweat level.
We have two questions that I would like to put. One is coming from India. It's from one of the Facebook users, which I find quite interesting because it's very strange that this question is put to you, is the following. What do you hope your legacy will be, and what should Facebook teach young people? So it's interesting to see that people are already speaking about your legacy.
Yeah, it's a little early, I think.
Yes, this is what I believe, but I thought that...
I think I'm 27, give me a break.
This is what I thought, but she's putting the question, and I believe, based on what we have read, that she's very much interested in the answer.
I think different people who build companies, I think, care about different things. So, you know, some people, I think, really care about a way of doing things. For me, the thing that I really care about is the mission of the company, right? Giving people the power to share, making the world more open and connected. And that's just something that I just really believe at a very deep level is important and is valuable and that we should fight to make sure happens in a good way. And that's why I've just spent the last 7.5 years of my life working like every single day to make that happen. That's the thing that I care about. So I just still think that we're way closer to the beginning than we are to the end of that. If you look at the ways that people are sharing today, I still think it's quite primitive compared to what is going to be possible and the power that will be in people's hands when we get to that end state. And I think that that's going to be awesome. And that's something that I think is really worth fighting for. So if we can play a part in making that happen, then that's awesome.
Thank you. I have one last question. Tomorrow, you will be meeting with the head of states of the 8 most important countries of the world, but China. Most of the discussion during this last 2 days have been around regulation, non-regulation, what could be the involvement of government in the internet, should it be laissez-faire? Some people have said do no harm. My question is, what would you like to tell the head of states tomorrow? What is the message that you would like to share with us and that you will carry to them?
Well, I think it's a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about here, right? That, I think that often you can look at the underlying trend of, more people are using the internet and all this stuff is happening, and isolate out the data points and say, okay, well, we want this set of things, but we don't want this set of things. And therefore, we should just kind of make it so that those set of things don't happen, but we still love these set of things. And I think that the most valuable part of all this debate, and really any debate, right? I mean, the debates that happen inside our company or that happen in the different industries is just kind of helping people understand how these things are connected, right? Because you can't, I mean, and that's what working together, I think, is helping people understand the dependencies and interconnections between things so that by creating some rule here, you don't unintentionally affect something over here. And, you know, I do think it's an honor to be here and to be invited to be here and to be able to participate in this dialogue. In almost every industry that I can think of, the public sector and private sector do work together to try to figure out how things should evolve. And I just think that as long as people understand how all these different pieces come together, then I think we're going to be able to get to a good place.
Mark, I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that everyone... Everyone in the room has felt the passion that you have for what you are doing, and I think that this is a true recipe for the success of Facebook. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you staying for the discussion? Okay. Stay for a few minutes more for the closing session.